fans, welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back. This is episode 244. Hey, I'm Nick Murawski. This is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast. We doing it live here on Monday night on our YouTube channel. We accommodated because of the Bears game. Boy, I'm so
good thing we got out of the way.
So glad we switched things up for the Bears game on Sunday night. You can subscribe, find this YouTube channel, and pass it along. Where the audio is available everywhere, but you already know that. With me, as always, my very good friend, some might say my best friend, a lifelong Sox fan, Pat Hester.
Hello, sir. The most important thing is, what do you say?
Oh, I say that's true. I would confirm that.
An awkward way to start the show.
Yeah, well, it's spooky season. It's the season of the witch a woman. And if you were watching anything, even if you watched a couple games of the Chicago White Sox in 2023, it was a nightmare. It lived up to the scary stuff. We're going to talk, scary stats, stuff that really spooked us and probably did you as well watching our Chicago White Sox. As now the World Series is going on. We're going to talk a little World Series and if the White Sox can follow this script of the Texas Rangers and Arizona Diamondbacks have put together. Maybe we'll celebrate, commiserate, we'll honor. I don't know how to phrase it. The anniversary of the TLR hiring. It probably goes in the scary column. And we're going to talk new bullpen pitching coach, Matt Wise. I've got some intel on that gentleman. So, Pat, you're watching the World Series. It's going on right now as we record. A lot of folks not happy that it's, the big teams, the big markets. I don't mind it at all. Good baseball. You got some stars. Arizona caught fire towards the end of the year. We saw that. They played the Sox, and Texas, did what they did in the offseason, and look at where they're at. And boy, talk about some guys, as it always is the case, I feel, in the postseason. There are players that step up and they're Mr. October or whatever. And, Garcia is kind of like that for the Rangers. I've enjoyed it so far. Game one was outstanding.
Yeah, so far so good. And there's going back to it's Arizona and Texas, and especially on the Arizona side, it's not so much Texas. I mean, the Rangers have been a great team all year. The stats back it up. A lot of things in their favor, and it's a big market. You're talking Dallas, or that's not a market to sniff at. But this is what happens when you expand playoffs. You get more flukiness into it. It's like, you know what? I got no time for that. If you're a good team, beat who you're supposed to beat in the playoffs. I really find it a hollow argument when people say, well, the Diamondbacks shouldn't be there. They got there on a fluke, and it's not representative of what the marathon of 162 games is. That's a bunch of BS, in my opinion. I would feel like, hey, if you played as well as you did, like the Orioles out there, Houston's of the world that have been knocked out and not here anymore, playing the Braves,
Atlanta
team all season, and went home early. I say suck it up, right? If you're supposed to be the best team, you should take care of business no matter who's on your schedule and who you're playing in the playoffs. I think the expansion of the playoffs, yes, has it allowed weaker teams in? Does it give more opportunity? Yes. But that's what all leagues do, Nick. All leagues have done this, and those are the leagues that are thriving. And again, I've mentioned it a lot. If Major League Baseball wants to continue to grow its league, right, and make itself more palatable to younger audiences, you've got to go to the way of the trend of the leagues that are being successful. So expanding playoffs is just something you're going to have to get over. And if you're going to be a good team and you want to win the World Series, then you're going to have to beat some of these teams that are weaker teams that get in and have momentum. So I'm excited about it. I haven't watched a lot outside of the first game, just been busy with life and kids and things like that. But I see Texas is up 3-0 right now. I'm excited about it. My kids are excited about it. It's a World Series. Just watch.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. And I think the flukiness gives, right now Sox fans are talking, well, wait a second, with what happened to the Rangers and where they were at a couple of years ago, or the Diamondbacks, could that happen to us, here in the next year or two? And, I get these emails from Scott Merkin. They're not personal.
You're getting personal emails. Wow, look at you.
They're not personal. It's like I subscribe to his newsletter, and he blasts out this newsletter. It later becomes, I think, an article on whitesox.com. But, he had said American League champion Rangers are 2 years removed from the 102 losses in 1 year past a 68-94 showing, while the National League champion Diamondbacks dropped 110 as recently as 2021 and finished with a 74-88 record in 2022. So he had an opportunity to interview the new assistant general manager, Josh Barfield. So Merkin says, could the White Sox travel the same path coming off a 61-101 showing? Barfield was with Arizona for 9 seasons. Okay. So he's kind of, I think he's had his hands in a lot of this, that what we're seeing right now out of the Diamondbacks. And of course, Barfield says anything is possible. Here's his quote. We have a bunch of talent already on this Sox roster. If we do things right, if things work out, there is a scenario where we can add and look to continue to build to grow toward the future, but also in the short term, be in the mix as well. So that's clear as mud, in my opinion. I don't think he chose one. It's very much the John C. Riley, GIF. I don't think he chose a path there to answer that question. It sounded like, we might. It was a very Han-esque answer. Talk about, Han.
Somebody left him the script on the desk. Said,
sure.
Rick left these behind. Thought maybe you could use the playbook.
Yeah,
there it is. Go for
break in case of emergency. And here, just a month and a half on the job. He's going through some of that stuff. So anything's possible. In your mind, Pat, do you see the Sox being able to follow something like what the Rangers have done?
Well, before I answer that, I'd like to just go back to the quote.
Sure,
it's interesting because it makes it sound like if there's a scenario and there's a way, does that mean that they have to start out and they're not going to plan on doing anything in the off season? They're going to go with it as is, and if they play well, then they'll be aggressive and try and get players at the trade deadline. It sounded very strange, like what is going to play out scenario wise in the off season that's going to make you want to add to this apparently already talented roster.
Well, I want to know what does it mean by if we do things right? What does that exactly mean? Do we really know what that is heading into this off season, winter meetings, and looking at 2024? What is the right thing to do in their minds?
Yeah.
We heard, obviously it's been made up. We talked about it quite a bit on this podcast of Grifol saying right away, after the trade deadline and kind of down the stretch until I think somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said, can you stop all of that? We're going to be competitive in 2024. We're right back there. The rebuild term has not been used. I mean, give me a break. Say what you want. This team, I don't believe, is going to be competitive. There is so much that needs to happen, and you'll get the picture when we go through our scary stuff from 2023. But again, you already know this, folks, if you've been watching the White Sox. So if you do things right, if things work out, so what does that mean? Does that mean health again? Does that mean guys returning to accustomed levels or to levels? If it workout is like, if you get the people that you want in the offseason, if trades work out, if you're able to flip guys, you're right. I mean, you could really break down this quote quite a bit, and it leaves me even more confused.
Well, it's interesting. You look at, because they're mirror images of each other, basically because they're owned by the same person in the Bulls and the Chicago White Sox. Everybody was so ready to get rid of Garpax and the change, and they were ready. for something new and different. And it's like, okay, these guys are coming in with a different perspective. And you have AK and Mark Eversley and Michael Reinsdorf's pretty much running the show. And actually, that front office has managed to be worse than the previous one. I'm curious if that'll be the same case now that the much maligned Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn are out for new blood coming in. Is it going to be worse, or is it going to be the same? That'll be what's fascinating over the winter, Nick, to just see if there is. And I think you and I are of the same mind that it's probably not going to be, because there's one common denominator, and that's the owner remains the same. And there's not much we can do about that at this point. But to go back to your question, I didn't mean to get us down on a tangent. You had asked about, can the Sox do similar to what the Rangers have done? And quite frankly, it's an easy no, because I don't see them investing in talent on the free agent market like the Texas Rangers have done. You had mentioned the 100+ loss season and a 96 I think it was 96 loss season last year, 4th in their division, and now in the World Series. But they not only did they invest in the players, in a Simeon and a Seager, they also invested in a proven manager that has World Series rings and skins on the walls. That's something that we don't currently have. I think you and I believe maybe the same, that if there was someone that was maybe came with some actual experience that the game hadn't passed by, as we had in Tony La Russa, that maybe this team would have at least been average last year, Nick. They would have at least competed for this weak division in the Central. There could have been an opportunity there with different leadership where people would have bought in to whatever that message was, and maybe taken on a different identity and had some type of culture, which now we're still lacking with this leadership. So I would say that it's a hard no, and it starts probably, I'd like to say at the very top, but let's start in the dugout and say, Pedro Gafal is still going to be managing this team. So until that change is made, I just don't know that this team is going to make some type of Herculean leap next year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's fascinating, what the Texas Rangers have been able to do, and sure, the knee-jerk reaction is to say anything's possible. Look at what's happened to them. Here we are after 101. Maybe in a couple of years. Look, that means Jerry is somehow all of a sudden going to play at the top of free agency. He's going with the best of the best, which has never happened. We know he's out on Shohei Ohtani for a variety of different reasons. I don't see him investing well in pitching and giving the type of contracts that he needs to give to get that type of pitching. And then you have holes in a lot of different areas that, not only have they not been able to figure out just adequate ball players for those holes, but above average, well beyond average to be competitive, and then you look at pitching and this, that, and the other. But the Grifol thing is really, I keep hammering away at that. And that is what is so irritating. If Chris Getz was behind the scenes pushing Grifol, and telling Rick Hahn, I know this guy, this is the guy. Yeah, you should really look into this guy. And their mindset, the brain trust of the Chicago White Sox last year around this time was saying, we still feel like we're in our window. We still have all the talent we think, not only to win this division, but go beyond. Well, then why get a manager who's going to bring in a coaching staff that has never had any actual experience as a big league manager? Yeah, impressive baseball resume. I get it. I get the Royals 2015 situation and the people he's mentored and all, the folks advocating for him. But if he hasn't done it, to any degree, let alone zero success, what are you really saying to the ball players in that clubhouse?
Yeah.
What what's the message to them? Is this guy is going to try to figure it out on the fly? That's the respect we have for you as players, is we're going to put this guy in, and he's different, and he's going to have a different mentality. So we should all embrace that. And of course, he said all the right things, but I think the manager plays a huge role. You know, we're still trying to figure out managerial war, but you know, someone that has got that can figure this out in terms of personalities. How do I get these guys to buy into something, to a certain way? How can I help be the leader? You know, how can I shoulder all of that and get a culture going the way I want it to? You know, that comes with experience. That comes with success. That comes with ups and downs. And it felt like when he got hired, when he was the chosen one, I had a feeling I knew where this season was going to be kind of going.
Yeah. And there's somebody out there right now. I think he's available because there's talk of him going to the Mets as Craig Counsell.
Sure.
And that would be someone that you look at it. It's like in his short time in Milwaukee, not short time. He's been there for a while, but in his time in Milwaukee, it seemed like the Brewers were always able to punch above their weight. They're in a division much like ours, not the strongest of divisions, but for a long time was controlled by the Cubs and the Cardinals. And it seemed like the Brewers would always be there, not the biggest spending team in the world, not, more reliant on their farm system and doing the things the right way and the fundamentals and all that. But the Brewers have been I would say, I haven't looked at the numbers, but a fairly successful team over Craig Counsell's run there. And that would be a guy that I think that look at an ex-player, right, that people know, that's young, I think would have a good feel for the game, and I think would command at least some respect in the dugout. So that would be someone like, if he was available and this team really was, and it wouldn't have to necessarily be him, but if you had someone come along that Chris Getz or anybody else would go, I hate to pull the old, like the poor Ricky Renteria that happened to him, but if we're really truly ready to win, like they say that maybe there is a chance and the things fall their way, you don't wait around. If good guys are available,
exactly.
If there's winning managers available, stop the press and go after guys that you think can really change the culture quickly, because the culture and identity, and it's been such a problem. If you think you have somebody out there that can fix that and fix it right away, that people will gravitate towards and run through a wall for, then why would you waste your time? There can't be that much money owed to Pedro Grifol. Like, there can't be that much owed to him in terms of where he's probably slated.
The Sox don't seem to have a problem wasting salaries and some of the dumps that they've made in the last couple of years.
Right. So to me, if this organization again was really hell bent on winning, and Jerry really cared about winning, if there was someone out there, not that he would want, but that his people said this would be a great move for us, then that's the way it should go. But it seems like they're fixated on Pedro. And there also is, I will play a little bit of the other side of the fence, Nick. With a year of experience, there is a possibility that Pedro can learn from his mistakes last year. There is
sure, absolutely. He should, right?
Yeah,
he should. But I think going back to last year, it was like you really set things back.
Yeah,
you set things back because last year was then a learning year for him. And if you're willing to do that with Pedro Grifol and say, well, he's going to learn and we'll figure it out, then why are you? It's so hypocritical when Reinsdorf's like, well, I'm not going to go outside of the organization and get anybody in for GM that's going to have to learn everybody here in the system and what's going on. It's what you did with Grifol. You allowed that to happen. Yeah. So you clearly don't mind taking setbacks, if it means that there might be success in the future. I just don't think, it could change. Anything's possible, right? That's kind of the theme of this little segment here. But the fact that he's still around and he is hired or he still is the manager of the Chicago White Sox, that's what eats at me right now.
What a time we live in.
I mean, it's just unbelievable that they really think this is the guy.
Make you angry?
I
now, this is only for people watching on YouTube, but I have masks today. It is.
Can you imagine Banner? Like, if there was that was a real thing. If like Banner was watching the Sox, and how many times that he would just hulk out and get angry during watching, just a random game. There were so many moments, you know, that you can just, you know, flip your lid. So I heard Counsell, you know, he might be interviewing with Cleveland, you know, so there you go. That's the Cleveland way.
Another manager that will, you know, in Cleveland that will out manage us for the foreseeable future. Just that's the way it'll be.
Yeah, so we did make some coaching decisions. The Sox did this past week. We've got a new bullpen coach. So we had talked about, you know, that it was leaked a while ago that Kurt Hassler was going to be reassigned or removed or just gone from the organization. And you know, there are a couple other coaches that have as well that we're going to be looking for: first base coach, a hitting coach. So we needed a bullpen coach, and we went with Matt Wise. He is the new bullpen coach, if you haven't heard about it. And I didn't know much about Matt Wise at all. Just the fact that I didn't know anything about him, you know, didn't get me very excited. But then again, like how many bullpen coaches or pitching coaches out there, you know, are heralded and household names. There's a small amount that are leaving or that were let go or that were allowed to, you know, interview, what have you. So I reached out to John Frisch, and he does the Locked On Angels podcast. He does it, I believe, with his brother. They do a fabulous job. And honestly, you know, since doing Locked On for you know, season and a half, there's some dedicated fans out there. You know, you have to be to do it on a daily basis. And when I need a little intel on a coach or a player, you know, I reach out, and I've made some great connections. And the response that I got from John on Matt Wise, oh my goodness. I mean, it was, there's obviously an opinion on Matt Wise here. And you might say, well, hey, it's just a bullpen coach. Come on. Like, why are we overreacting? But why is Hassler let go? You know, and on the surface, the optics are, a bullpen coach just basically just hangs out in the bullpen and tracks some pitches and, you know, answers the phone. But we know that there's so much more in that. So I'll give you the response. It's a meaty response from John Frisch from Locked On Angels. So this is what he had to say. Angel fans are thrilled that Matt Wise is gone. He was our bullpen. That's how he started out his response to me. He was our bullpen coach in 2020, but then Mickey Callaway got fired, so they promoted Wise to interim pitching coach. Then they just kind of let him stay at pitching coach and never considered hiring someone else. Kind of odd, but the starting staff actually had a top 10 ERA in the league in 2022. But then most of the young starters who tore it up in 22, like Reed Detmers and Patrick Sandoval, really regressed in 2023. In fact, there was a moment in 2023 where Matt Wise encouraged Reed Detmers to pitch to contact. And let me tell you, that was an awful idea. You look at the metrics and StatCast numbers, and it's easy to see that Detmers is not that kind of pitcher at all. Another note is that there was a time in 22 that Detmers was sent down to the minors to work on things. This was after his no-hitter, and he began struggling after that. It was another pitching coach in the minors who helped Detmers fix his slider and make it more effective, and also immediately identified it, not Matt Wise. That's been the frustrating thing about Matt Wise. He doesn't seem to be able to identify problems and know how to fix them. Mike Trout, standing in the outfield, could tell you if one of our relievers was tipping his pitches before Matt Wise could recognize it. A running joke amongst Angel fans is imitating our radio guy and saying, Matt Wise pays a visit to the mound, and now here's the next pitch, and that one is gone. So, you know, it really in depth. I appreciated the intel and the insight from John Frisch from Locked On Angels. But in reading that, a lot of that sounded very familiar from the Chicago White Sox way. Is a guy would go down, and all of a sudden they're raking in the minors, and somebody saw something, or a pitcher of ours is going outside of the organization to get help from a different pitching coach, or, you know, was it Luis Robert Jr. had his own private hitting coach, which is probably not uncommon. It happens, but so that, I mean, that's just that's what I'm getting from Angel fans on the newest addition to the coaching staff, Pat.
Well, when I saw it, I mean, it was interesting because again, you're plucking people, and he was a bullpen coach, and then he was a interim pitching coach. So it wasn't like he was promoted to pitching coach. It was we needed a body in
Callaway was fired, and
so
abruptly,
it wasn't like he's coming to the White Sox and getting a promotion, right? I want people to come to this organization that had a lower position, and we're taking them away because we see their potential in doing something greater, not because he's taking a lateral move. That tells me that this guy isn't going to be worth a shit. So again, you could tell me that bullpen pitching coach maybe doesn't matter, but I like to think that every coach has something to contribute to this team, and everybody should be. You would hope everybody is going to be somebody that's going to make a difference. And I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just crazy or too much. But when I saw it, it's like the Angels have been one of the most disappointing teams in all of baseball. They've got the two best players. It's not even close, probably in all of baseball. If you combine them together, and you've got them on the team, they can't even sniff the playoffs, and it's a lot because of their pitching staff has let them down. And we're going to take someone, a coach that in some way, shape, or form was in charge of bullpens, and for a time being in charge of the staff entirely, and say that that's going to be a good fit to help us this year. Nick, I know you're not a big fan, but this is the way. This is the White Sox way. We take people from bad organizations and bring them on because that's what we do. Royals, bring it on. I can't wait till we start plucking things from the Oakland A's.
Well, I tried to find a Royals connection with Matt Wise. I couldn't find it. It's just uninspiring. And again, like, I don't know, who would I want as bullpen coach? I think you said it pretty well. It's just, somebody that almost isn't allowed to leave their organization. I don't know how you can quantify that or figure that out, but somebody that's on the up and up that, I don't know. I didn't like hearing that response from John Frisch. So
is wearing this mask distracting you?
I love that you brought props, here.
Can you name the character that I am currently?
You're something. You're a Star Wars character, are you not?
Yes, you're in the right genre. Right. Yeah, I'm Jin Darin. I'm the Mandalorian. So take that off.
You hate the fact that I don't think I've seen all Star Wars movies.
I don't hate the fact that you can like whatever you'd like.
I know you mash your teeth, and I know privately you're extremely disappointed that I can't quote Star Wars with you, and I can't dissect different.
It's okay, Nick.
Okay,
yeah, I'm past it. I've known you.
I'm glad you've worked through it.
I've gotten
workshopped through it. All right.
Yeah.
So we'll see. That's just, hey, that's the thing that happened. We still are waiting on a few other coaches, and there's obviously going to be a lot of decisions that are going to be made once the World Series wraps up and the offseason really kicks into gear. So we're here recording the day before Halloween. We're wrapping up kind of spooky season here, as everybody kind of will just flip the switch right away to the holidays, whatever holiday you're going right into it. You're going to leapfrog Thanksgiving. You're going to whatever is celebrated in December. So we wanted to look just some scary stuff, and everything about 2023 was scary. Just about everything. There were, of course, some bright spots, Luis Robert Jr., a few other things, but a lot of scary stuff from this past season. So I took a look at some pitching stuff. Pat, you were looking at some offense. Do you want to jump in and start going, or do you want me to throw you kind of the pitching, the scary stuff from the pitching realm?
I'll start. I'll start on
the
offensive side of the ball, and you did give me a special assignment to look specifically at Gavin Sheets, so I'll save that.
Who scares the hell out of me?
I'll save that for the end. But I gathered a couple bullet points I thought were interesting. These are all from Fangraphs, and I just grabbed AL rankings. I didn't do all of Major League Baseball. I just thought, let's narrow it down to see where the White Sox are at least just in the American League.
Okay.
Because, if we're going to do anything, it's going to be in that league. I just thought, looking at it, a large picture maybe was too much, but I thought this tells a great story. So AL rankings, let's go to the low-hanging fruit first, Nick. You've got a team that was built on hitting home runs that didn't hit home runs. In the American League, they were ranked 11th. I was actually surprised it was that high, with 171 home runs. Behind them, but these are the teams that are behind them. And so some of them you'll go, oh, that makes me feel pretty good because we're succeeding in this division of awful teams. So it must make somebody feel proud because, well, look at these other teams that we just smashed here that are in our division. So behind them was Oakland with 170. Well, tied with them was Oakland with 171, Detroit 165, Kansas City 163, and Cleveland with 124. Those teams ring a bell with you. So that just tells you how horrible right there, because of a sport now that's so based. It's become so based on hitting the ball out of the ballpark. In fact, I texted you the other day, and I can't remember exactly the quote from the game, the World Series game. And it talked about teams that are in the probably top third in terms of hitting home runs. And those are the teams that are typically been in the World Series over the past, I think it was 20 years. And there was one exception. It was the 2015 Kansas City Royals. And I said, isn't that just who we're going to be? We're going to be a team that doesn't hit home runs. And the only thing I could glean out of that was maybe we'll eventually have an identity, because that team at least had an identity with their pitching and their bullpen and the way they defended the ball. But anyway, I digress. Home runs was my number one scary stat because of the fact this team was built
in that ballpark too.
Yep. It was built upon hitting the ball of the ballpark, a ballpark that's very home run happy, and they couldn't do it.
That's been the problem, I think, for a couple of years. And just a guy, I mean, we discussed when the season wrapped, Eloy Jimenez.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely increased his games played. There were still some injury hiccups. What happened? Mm-hmm. Where's your power at? And there were so many other guys. That is scary. That trend, which, okay, they're looking for new hitting coaches. Like, we'll see. That was supposed to have changed with Castro coming in and all the things he was doing and involved in with Atlanta and Johnson and what he was doing in Charlotte. It's beyond scary. It's a nightmare, and so can you fix it overnight? Well, I don't know if that's the type of team that they want to be, to your point.
I don't know if that's the team they are anymore, Nick.
Yeah, I think you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, well, we wanted that, but that's not where this is going. So how do we make the most out of what we can do? Okay, like, this is what we're doing. These are the trends. This is how things are going. We wanted it to go some other way, but we're seeing this type of output from these players. Well, let's try to maximize that. This is what you're doing. I'm not going to try to change you. Let's just do what you're doing really well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or you want me to go pitching?
Yeah. Hit me with some pitching.
Pitching in general. I'm a pitching guy, and that's what I want them to focus in the offseason and talk about regression in 2023. And I didn't get into a lot. I didn't do a Chris Getz deep dive into tunneling and missed barrels and stuff after the seventh inning and all this stuff. But Sox pitching 13th in the AL in team ERA, 13th, ahead of KC and Oakland, 26th in all of baseball. Okay, now in 2022, they were third in the AL and 16th in all of baseball. In terms of starters, they were middle of the pack, third in 2022. So again, the regression. Strikeouts, now here was the bright spot for Sox pitching. Top three Sox pitching in strikeouts. Bullpen had an ERA that was 11th out of 15 in the AL, 5th in 2022. So again, this is why Matt Wise is coming in. He's going to fix all this stuff
Matt
up.
Wise.
Sox pitching issued the second most walks in all of baseball in 2023, which is up 7 slots from the previous year. And Sox pitching gave up the most home runs in all of the American League with 214. So we're not hitting home runs, but we're giving up home runs plenty. And Lance Lynn had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, at least somebody's having fun hitting home runs in the ballpark. That's fantastic. The interesting thing about that with the walks and the strikeouts you had mentioned, what would you say, third in the league in strikeouts this year?
Yeah.
Which is great, but you've got to throw a lot of pitches to strike people out, and you're throwing a lot of pitches when you're walking people. So probably, stressed a lot of people more than they needed to be stressed.
Well, we had the walks leader on our staff, which I can get to in a little bit after you throw us some offensive stuff. So that's to your point for sure.
All right. Well, my second one is runs scored. It's very simple, Nick. You need to score more runs than the other team to win. That's the most important stat, right? They finished, second to last in terms of runs scored in the American League at number 14. 641 runs that scored this past year, good for 3.9 runs per game. Now, if you compare that with the team that's playing and representing the American League in the World Series, Texas was number 1. 5.4 runs per game. And you'd think, wow, that doesn't seem like that big of a difference, 3.9 versus 5.4. But here's where it gets interesting, Nick, and this pulls in a little bit more in terms of where you're at in the pitching. But we talk a lot about run differential. Mm-hmm. So run differential for the White Sox was minus 200 this past year, Nick. Minus 200. And the Texas Rangers were plus 165.
Yeah, you go.
That's a 365 point difference, or 365 run difference between, the World Series and being 101 losses. So
sure.
We can look at and slice and dice a lot of numbers in a lot of different ways, but it quite simply comes down to, if you could have scored about 4.5 runs per game, you probably would have won this division.
Yeah, and that maybe comes with your home run conversation, mm-hmm. or just playing a better version of what you want to be. You know, so that's spooky. That is really that one, that run differential that can give you some nightmares. And how do you? What do you want to? What do you need to do in the offseason to figure that out? There's a lot that goes into that. To making that number less of a nightmare. So I focused, I had 2 more pitching stuff, and they were players, and Cease and Kopech were the 2 guys that I really focused on, that really, they frustrated me. I know they were frustrated with themselves this past season. And it's really scary stuff when you look from Cease from 2022, which he was on top of the world. Of course, it's going to be difficult to stay there, but the regression this year. And of course, Kopech, Cease now he started 33 games in 2023 compared to 32 in 2022. So he takes the ball. He has always taken the ball. He stayed healthy, and he had fewer innings, worse ERA, of course, in 2023 by a lot. Gave up far more hits and 1 more walk than he did in 2022. Led all of major leagues in wild pitches with 14. He was only at 7 in 2022. And that I can only think of, his slider was not working the way he wanted it to in 2023. And is that a force? Is he trying to get far more spin? Is he trying to get that more effective where he's spiking it into the ground? It's just not doing what he wants it to do. And you see that in the results of 14 wild pitches. He surpassed 200 strikeouts once again in 2023, but that number far less than in 2022. And again, that was his banner year right now. So obviously he did not have anywhere close to the follow-up that we wanted. He just looked like he just had no command over some of his stuff. Again, the strikeouts were there, but could not go deep into games. The walks were up. I mean, he probably could have led the league in walks if it wasn't for Kopech, which I can get to, maybe after you throw me another offensive situation. But a guy that I think, we've discussed that he's got enough arsenal to make a bounce back, but like the greats, they string together multiple years,
Yeah.
They know the bullseyes on their back and they deliver year after year after year after year. Sure, there might be some drop off here and there. They're not winning the Cy Young every single year, but they're up there. They're that feared pitcher. And I wonder if coming into this past season, teams were like, look, Cease is their ace. We're gonna get this guy. We're gonna definitely study this guy. He's not gonna fool us, on how he approaches. Maybe hitters were a little bit more aggressive right off the gate. They didn't want to get down an account on Cease where they're going to have to deal with some of his nasty wipeout stuff. They jumped all over him. Maybe there was a tell, in terms of, he's going to get you a get over something early in the count. Go ahead and take advantage of that. If that's something to your liking, do it earlier in at bat than later. But the numbers and everything else, scary stuff for Cease.
Yeah, definitely disappointing, and we've talked about it several times about how the season just continued to roll downhill for him right after game one. He never seemed to regain what he had in the first game of the season, where he went up against the Houston Astros with the 10 strikeouts, and it just looked like he was the same pitcher from the year before. And I think we were starting to have conversations about where there's no way we can afford this guy because he's
right, sure.
With Boris as his agent and you putting, that one game and last year's resume together, and you're thinking it's going to continue, maybe not as good as it was the year before, but you're looking at it like, holy cow, we're going to lose this guy pretty quick. So very interesting there. My next stat was on base percentage. Surprisingly, we were dead last in the American League, and this one we were at 291. The league average in on base percentage, Nick, was 320, and good it would be considered 360. And I had to look that up because me, I'm not I'm not a big stats guy and talking about.
We don't weigh heavily on numbers, but they're out there. They're very accessible.
But if you're talking, just to be candid, I mean, a lot of it is very simple. I mentioned runs and run differential in my last stat. If you're not having people on base and you can't get people on base and you're the worst in the league at it, Nick, it's going to be really hard to score runs, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you're not hitting the ball, if you're not hitting 4 or 5 solo home runs in a game, you're not going to score a lot of runs. So I guess the disappointment for me in this aspect comes back to the manager we had mentioned, earlier on in Pedro Gafal, and talking about how disciplined this team would be and how we're going to really work to get on base and all that stuff that really got us excited about Pedro in the beginning of the season. And then what he was able to produce, or what he was able to lead his staff with, was a dead last in the American League in on base percentage. Now, I didn't look up any of the walks. I know that we don't walk ever. So I would imagine without even looking at it, we were dead last in walks. Without even looking, I'm guessing that's where we'll be because, again, the on base percentage is what it is. So again, it's a broken offense. It has a zero identity offense. And it's an undisciplined offense.
Yes, that's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
So it's just very disappointing. There's not much more I can say about that, but that's a really scary stat when you're dead last in the American League and on base percentage.
And Grifol gave statements early in the season about, this isn't just a you switch that you flip. This is a learned skill. We're changing the way. And that was kind of the same mantra throughout the season. Every time he was asked about the chasing and the lack of discipline, it's like, we're addressing it. But that was stuff that he was supposed to be working on, Castro and others, in the off season. That was the stuff that we were hearing was going on. So that's to me goes back to you've never done this before, man, and things got off the rails and you did not know how to get this back on the rails. You just didn't know because you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. And sure, he might have a little bit more experience, of course, to lean on, and maybe he's asked some folks and weighed in, and there might be other, there's some different coaches, and who knows, there might be some different types of players coming in that can go about their business the way he wants it to be done. They're willing to listen. I don't know, but again, when I read all of those statements, it just sounded like he's kicking the can, like he's just avoiding. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. And when it went that way and it never got better, it was like, this is a lost cause.
Well, I've got good news for you. Tony La Russa is available. If you need to, he's there, as Jerry said. If you need to call him and ask him questions, he's available to answer any and all questions that you might have.
He's
and
an
help you
absolute
manage.
consultant. So my last scary pitching stuff, it comes from Kopech, and I feel bad continuing to hammer away at this guy, but we're coming up, in a month and change, a month and a week on the big rebuild anniversary. Of course, he alongside Moncada. I don't have to tell anybody this. We're sick of hearing this, but that was the critical moment. And what have we done? And look at where we're going. I still don't know what we have in Kopech. He seems more frustrated than anybody. I don't think the coaches know what they're doing with him. He started 2 more games than in 2022. So he increased that this past season, but then was relegated to the bullpen down the stretch. And Pedro's saying, well, maybe, he's got the stuff to be a reliever, but I really want to, I want him to have the mindset to be a starter when we go to Arizona. Like, what a game that is for a guy who can't even throw strikes. Now you're going to throw that into his mind of trying to, navigate his way through that word puzzle. Had his personal worst ERA in 2023, which isn't shocking. Led the American League in walks with 91. And if you watched a few of Kopech's starts and you just try to extrapolate that, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, he could not find the plate sometimes. Issued 57 walks the previous season in 2022, while pitching only 10 fewer innings. So if you're telling me it's an innings thing, it's really not. He had no control in 2023, and he really had no answers. And, again, we've seen glimpses, and I think, just not this past season, but he's one of those players I'd put on my Mount Rushmore of like scary. What I thought we were going to get from Michael Kopech and what we have received, and now looking at the murky future, you're on my Mount Rushmore of I don't want to say busts, but just, I guess, scary. I'm scared for us as fans. I'm scared for you because it just, and I don't know. I really don't know if the bullpen is for him. I know he's got the stuff. He's got the arm. He could maybe be electric in short situations, but we need guys coming out of the bullpen, throwing strikes right away. Having nasty stuff, control of your out pitch is very important. We're seeing it in the postseason. But if you're telling me you have no control and you're leading the AL in walks, I don't know if I want you out of my bullpen. Would that mindset change all of a sudden if you're coming out of the bullpen? All of a sudden you're going to be throwing strikes better? I don't know about that.
Yeah, and with all the things that you had mentioned with the pitching that was woeful this year, why is Ethan Katz safe? Why does he get the pass? That
is a great point. That is an excellent point. The Katz lab and everything that's going to change and the process and how he's doing things and why that wasn't a Grifol hire, right?
Well, and that's the thing about the pitching coach on the South Side, Nick. It seems to never be the manager's actual hire. It's always the pitching coach is put in place, and this is who the guy that you have to have, regardless of what you might want, right? It was that way with Don Cooper. Don Cooper was several managers, pitching coach. And it was because, and Coop did a great job for most of the time that he was here, but he definitely wore out his welcome towards the end, I would say. But I just can't imagine that critical of a role. Now, whether just remove the way we feel about Pedro Grifol for a second, the fact that you're not going to allow your manager to pick the pitching coach that he wants to have on his staff, you have to tell him who he's going to have. I wouldn't want that job. I wouldn't want to be a manager of a team if I was told who my pitching coach is going to be.
Yeah, you have to be in sync. You have to be in
Yeah.
lockstep, but maybe you don't. I mean, we know that throughout history there have been, coordinators and head coaches and all this stuff that haven't been on the same page, but they've had success and somehow it worked. But when I'm looking at a 101 loss team and I'm looking at some firings and they're making changes, yet the pitching coach stays, when I just gave you all these numbers and there's so many more to pour over of the regression, and I know that we let pitchers go at the trade deadline. So it could be, skewed, of course, some of these numbers. And you look at the arms that were coming out in September and you're like, well, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Of course, some of the numbers are going to be like that. But what we saw at the beginning, that's not what you wanted. You just knew something was going on here. And what's happening with these guys? And yeah, why is Katz safe? If I am Getz and I'm bringing in my guys now and Hahn and Williams are gone, well, then I'm saying, let me bring in a pitching coach that I trust, that I know we've got the same philosophy. Let me really do this my way. If I'm going to stay, let me completely change everything, and it seems like Getz is, extremely supportive of Grifol. So maybe Katz is like saying all the right things and they truly believe in his philosophy. I don't know.
It's very interesting, Nick. And I've got two last stats.
Okay.
And I apologize that I did more than probably was required. I'll do these next
two
pretty
beyond.
quick.
I love it. That's
another one. Wonderful. Last in the American League was WAR. We were at 3.3. Now, don't ask me to tell you what WAR really means. I'm not gonna break it down because I'm not that bright when it comes to these stats. But what I thought was interesting about it, the team right above us was the Oakland A's, and they were 2 times better in this statistic. The Oakland A's were better than us by 2 times in wins above replacement. So I thought that was interesting. You wanted me to look a little bit deeper into Gavin Sheets.
Oh, sure, Gavin.
We were very bullish
Sheets.
on. I mentioned on base percentage before. An average in the American League this year was, or actually in all of baseball, was 320. He was at 267, so well below the league average in OBP. His WAR was a minus 1.4. To put it into context, Luis Robert Jr. was a 5 WAR. So you could just kind of think, okay. And I think Ohtani was a 6.6.
Sure.
When I looked at that, so that, and his, this was another stat. Again, don't ask me what it all means, but his batting plus base running was a combined minus 16.4. So I don't really know what all that means.
Well, the minus in front of it, Pat, is never a good thing.
It's a minus, and it's a double-digit minus.
Yeah.
To put it in
compare, double-digit minus.
To compare it with somebody that's a good player, though, you look at Luis Robert Jr., who was a plus 22.2. So you can see the vast difference in how poor this man was. He's not a Major League Baseball player.
Luis Robert Jr. sometimes looked over to his left when he was in right field and just like, what are you doing on this team? Why? There's no name. I talked to Connor McKnight. I think around spring training, he was a guest on Locked On, and we talked Gavin Sheets, and I think Connor, he tried. It was difficult for him to separate the Gavin Sheets as the player from the person, because he's like, I've gotten to know Gavin Sheets, and he's such a nice guy. He's awesome. And I've heard that from other people. Like, Gavin Sheets is a really great guy and probably a great teammate and just awesome to be around. But, and it's not even almost to him, it's to the organization of what they tried to do and how they tried to force Gavin Sheets into that role of, we're going to try to make you an outfielder, and we're going to make, and Gavin Sheets said all the right things. He said at the beginning of the season, I've worked hard in the offseason. I know I'm going to be a better defender or wherever they want me to play, but it was really your left-handed bat. We need your power bat. We need a consistent power bat. It's difficult in small samples, coming off the bench to flex that power. That's a tough role. But if he was consistently hitting like Berger was, we would find something for you regularly. You would force your way into the lineup when you would show up in those big moments. I didn't see anything from Gavin Sheets where I'm like, this guy absolutely we need this guy on our team moving forward. Not at all.
Yeah, and I agree with I don't know Gavin Sheets like Connor does, obviously, but I have met him. He's a wonderfully nice young man, but he's a 4A baseball player. He's probably not a AAA player, but he's definitely not a major league player. There's not room on this roster if you're ready to win for a Gavin Sheets.
Yes,
It
if you're
doesn't
ready
provide
to
you.
win, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't provide you the thing you need, which is left-handed power, and he definitely is not going to provide you things that you need from in terms of an outfielder or speed or base running or things like that. So he's not a contributor, which is unfortunate because he's a good dude.
Yeah, I mean to sum up like this whole 2023 season, and I know we'll continue to talk about and reflect on it, but in theme of just Halloween and the scary stuff that came out of 2023, we really need Batman. We need a superhero.
Yeah, this one's for you, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, well, this is right up my alley. It's not like I would be confused on that. No, nor anybody, I think, on mankind would be confused. But I would look at to the SNL clip of Chris Farley when he was confused with the decaf or with the coffee, that famous clip, and just how do you feel, knowing you were drinking, what was it, like instant crystals or whatever it was, and
Yeah,
just angry.
yeah,
So if anybody asks me these days, like, oh, what'd you think of that season? It's just angry.
yeah,
That sums it up for
yeah,
2023.
and
So
and that's a lot what Batman is vengeance. He is the
it
night,
is
and
vengeance. Yeah.
and I feel like you and I would like to take out our vengeance on the crime of the South Side and solve some mysteries. Maybe the mystery of what happened in left field.
Now you kind of went into the Scooby-Doo angle there. If we're just in a
Well,
mystery
you
machine
know that
solving mysteries, yeah,
Batman's he has no superpowers, as you know, but he is the world's greatest detective.
and that is his power,
Yes.
his intel and of the like, and I think he could be anybody. I think that's what the draw
Well,
to Batman is.
Batman could be anybody. He's a symbol.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you could Pedro Grifol could rally and say we're going to take vengeance on the league and on the American League, and is he going to have the players to do it? Again, I'm really I'm interested. I don't have high hopes. I don't have high hopes at all for the offseason because I've seen it before. I know how this is going to go. However, these are new folks making decisions.
Yeah.
So there could be and that's what I thought 2023 was going to be, is like that 2022 is never going to happen again. It's a comeback for us. We're going to avenge, and we are going to get back to the top of the AL and, reclaim our spot. Well, you didn't even do anything close to that. So, I mean, you could have that attitude. You got to have that chip on your shoulder, right?
Yeah.
Of, we're better than what we played. We've got a new attitude. We've got a new look, and we're coming after you.
Well,
It's not
and
like
all the
what,
while the defending champs in the division regressed terribly, right?
right. So if the rest of the American League Central take like a bunch of steps backwards, that could be
then we've got
something.
something. Now we've got something.
We're cooking. Now you've got something. So to kind of before we wrap up here, we've got the Pedro quote of the week. I wasn't going to forget about that. And there's so many scary quotes from Pedro Grifol throughout the season. You can go off season, you can go during the season. No shortage. This is one of my favorite ones from early in the year. This one got me kind of excited, and it just went belly up. We can't win a championship in the spring, but we can lose one in the spring if we're not prepared. I truly believe that, is what Pedro Grifol said. And that one was the one that got me hyped. I mean, there were a lot of them, but I got really hyped by that. And I said, you know what? This guy is not going to play the long game and say, well, it's a long season. We'll just take it in stride. Then we'll decide to, put our foot on the gas in May or in June or something. I was like, no, they're going to be playing good baseball, solid baseball. They're going to care every single game. They're going to really, they're going to be serious about this because these games matter just as much as they do in September.
Yeah.
And they clearly weren't prepared. And he was right on his quote. He was right on with it.
He was right on. And the thing that what just came to my mind when I heard that, Nick, was the Seinfeld episode when Jerry was renting the car. And you know how to take a reservation. It's the holding. He knows what to say.
Anybody can just take.
He just doesn't know how to do his job. So he says all the right things.
Yeah.
But he just can't do it. So there's a big difference there.
Well, Pat, thanks for playing along with scary stuff from 2023. I hope we don't have to have this as something we do regularly. And, it's been last off season was rough. I want to have hope, but I'm also realistic, and I'm kind of eager to get this World Series out of the way so we can kind of start seeing the identity, the direction where the Sox team might go. So
I agree with you, sir. It was fun. And somehow we managed to do this show over an hour and talk White Sox baseball. It still amazes me.
And you have a lot of masks. You have one heck of a collection. You have like a trunk of masks that are just, I mean, that one I thought you'd use that a little bit sooner.
You always end on a high note, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. It is always a pleasure, buddy. We will try again next week. Folks, you can find this podcast. The audio is absolutely everywhere. We try to do this on Sunday nights live on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, pass it along. We are crawling to 250, episode 250, and we're going to kick off season 6 in early December when the winter meetings start up. So we've been doing this for a long time. We'll do it all off season long. You can find us on Twitter X at Good Guys TV. We've got a Facebook fan page. Thank you so much, folks, for tuning in and for continuing to pass this along and your support. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.